On today's episode of Central Intelligence of Artists Most Wanted, we talk about a man from Texas who has been on the run for 5 years. He is a sculptor and he is considered armed and dangerous. Today's suspect is David Adickes, and he is known as the Presidential Sculptor. David Adickes was born in 1927 in Huntsville, Texas. He attended Sam Houston State University and the Kansas City Art Institute. After receiving his bachelor's degree in math and physics, Adickes went to France and studied with a French master named Fernand Léger from 1948 to 1950. After learning all that he could from Mr. Léger, Adickes returned to Houston and began his artistic career. Throughout the 1950s and into the early 1960s, Adickes made a name for himself by traveling all around the world and painting beautiful pieces. He was widely regarded as one of the best painters of his time. However, later on in his illustrious career, Adickes decided to try sculpting, and this turned out to be a great decision. In order to better understand the behavior of Mr. Adickes, the Central Intelligence of Artists decided to look into some of his other sculptures more carefully. This search had our team go all across Texas and even into Virginia, but we had to find out more about our suspect. The first sculpture that the Central Intelligence of Artists have decided to look into in order to better understand Mr. Adickes is the Sam Houston statue located in Huntsville, Texas. At a staggering 67 feet tall and located on a 10-foot tall base, this statue is called a tribute to courage. Sam Houston was a celebrated political architect of Texas, and this statue is made of concrete and can be seen while driving on Interstate 45. Sam Houston is touted in attraction literature as the second largest freestanding statue in the United States. This has given us great insight into Mr. Adickes' ability and talent. After inspecting the Sam Houston statue in Huntsville, Texas, the Central Intelligence of Artists decided to travel up to Williamsburg, Virginia, and inspect the president's heads, as well as find out what happened to the president's park that was closed in 2004. The president's heads were in an open-air museum and were 18 to 20 feet high, of the presidents ranging from the 1st, George Washington, to the 43rd president, George W. Bush. David Adickes was inspired after driving past Mount Rushmore on a trip back from Canada. Unfortunately, this park was closed, but the president's heads have been relocated to a city in Virginia and are still available for people to view. After returning from Virginia, the CIA team decided to drive down to Houston and investigate the Beatles statues. The Beatles are widely regarded as one of the greatest band groups of all time, and the Central Intelligence of Artists wanted to find out exactly why Mr. Adickes sculpted them. After going through and reviewing documents, our team was able to find footage of Mr. Adickes explaining exactly why he made these sculptures. Their creativity, their musicianship, their writing, their sense of portrait. They're just very creative guys, said Mr. Adickes. Despite looking at some of those incredible sculptures, there is still one sculpture by David Adickes that is considered to be the most dangerous. It is known as Virtuoso. In 1982, Adickes was commissioned to design a sculpture for Houston's Performing Arts Center. Then, in 1988, a man by the name of Joe Russo contacted Adickes and told him to sculpt something that expressed the arts of downtown Houston. After its completion, Joe Russo loved Virtuoso, and it was well received by the public as well. Virtuoso is a cubist-style, 36-foot tall sculpture made in the late 1980s. At first, Adickes considered using stone because it would be able to handle the elements of the downtown Houston area and it would be visually appealing. However, Adickes figured that the weight of stone would be staggered throughout the sculpture. Therefore, after careful consideration, Adickes decided to go with concrete to build Virtuoso because it would be more hollow and lighter than stone. Virtuoso is essentially a giant cello being played by an orchestra player with a mustache and a goatee. The cello player has an invisible body, and the only thing we see are his hands and his face. Behind the giant cello stands a trio playing the violin, bass, and flute. The deeper meaning behind Adickes' sculpture is that he wanted to tell us that the body of the orchestra player is not as important as their facial expressions and the hands that actually help make the music. David Adickes was last seen in 2010 when he moved back to his birthplace in Huntsville, Texas. Mr. Adickes' studio was closed, but the facility is still home to a lot of galleries and boutiques. If anyone has information on David Adickes' whereabouts, please contact the Central Intelligence of Artists at 936-CIA-ARTZ. That's 936-242-2789.